Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman.
Hello, this is Matt Truman. Thank you for downloading this episode. Thank you for sharing with a friend. Today on the podcast, we have a lot to talk about. I know I say that quite a bit, but we do. A lot of things have happened. I'm recording this on May 17th, the evening of May 17th, and the primary's happening. You'll hear this on May 18th, but the primary in Pennsylvania, the big primary, right now, as we speak, there is a neck-and-neck, it's essentially a tie between McCormick and Oz. Oz is the candidate Donald Trump endorsed, and McCormick is edging him out at this current time, 31% to 30%. So it's and it's 50% of the votes in, so it's going to happen. The call will happen on who wins this race shortly. Kathy Barnett, who is in the last month, a firebrand in the Republican Party. A lot of folks came out to support her right after the leak of the Supreme Court decision or alleged decision on Roe v. Wade. She came out and presented herself as a child of rape, and she would double down and say, "I am pro-life." It was an amazing story. So later in this podcast, we'll talk about that a little more. We'll also talk about funding Ukraine. We'll talk about Finland and Russia. And folks, we have to talk about and probably start with the shooting in Buffalo, New York. Now, there's a lot of things going on about this. A lot of talk on radio and TV and on the internet and everywhere on who to blame and what to blame. There's really only one person to blame for this, and that's the shooter. The shooter committed the crime. Now, you can go deep and say, well, did the school have responsibility in this? No, they didn't. And the reason is because apparently this kid who shot up the top supermarket in Buffalo, New York, and killing 10 people, was reported at school because he said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" or something to this effect. And he said, "Murder and suicide," and they sent him off. So some think, oh, well, it's the school to blame. Oh, it's the counselors to blame. It's the parents. Obviously, the parents have some culpability in this, right? Raising your kid, knowing your kids. Don't let your kids go if they need help, right? A lot of things. But what the news is talking about right now is race, which I try to steer away from on this podcast. But all of the left-wing news agencies are talking about race, and other news agencies are talking about taking away the guns because this is a gun issue. This isn't a troubled kid issue. This isn't a kid who, perhaps have a different ideology. No, this is about guns and this is about race. Those are simply two issues that politicians love to stir and pull the heartstrings of voters in order to sway them a certain direction. It's nothing more and it's nothing less. If these politicians, these left-wing Democrat politicians, truly cared about black lives, they would stop abortion of black lives. But do they? No, they encourage it. And before we go any more in depth into this current situation, my heart and my prayers go out to anyone, to the families and all the folks that were affected, impacted, and just lives completely destroyed, upended because of some crazy lunatic. My prayers are with them tonight. All the family, the friends, the neighbors. What a horrible tragedy. And we've talked about these things here on the podcast many times. We talked about Waukesha, and we just got done talking about Brooklyn, New York. And we talked about that idiot in South Carolina who walked into the black church. Right, this thing's happen. The guy in Brooklyn, he was a black guy who happened to be racist too. And now you got what appears to be a racist committing acts against African Americans, black folks in New York. It's not the guns. It's crazy animals out here in the world. They don't care about your gun laws. Politicians, they don't care about your gun laws. They'll do it anyway. Oh, well, if we create all these gun laws, everything will be set. No, look, New York has how many laws on guns? And it happened in New York. It happens in Chicago every day, every weekend. All these big cities with these gun laws, folks. So our illustrious president, he didn't go to Waukesha. He didn't go, no. Wouldn't be bothered with that. This tragedy gives politicians a leg up. Ooh, never let a crisis go to waste. Remember that, folks? They don't. They use tragedies like this to get you fired up and other folks fired up to pit each other against each other, so then you forget about inflation, high gas prices, $40 billion to Ukraine, Hunter Biden's laptop, 2,000 mules. I mean, wow. Shall we go on? Deploying special forces to Somalia. Endless regime change wars. Russia sending nuclear-capable missiles to the Finnish border because Finland wants to join NATO. I mean, folks, they use these things to distract you. And I don't mean to sound callous. I truly don't. Because those folks who were gunned down in New York are precious human lives. We're precious human lives that God created. It's terrible. But what upsets me sitting here is how politicians capitalize on things like this to divide you, not to bring you together, to divide you. Well, it's about race. That's part of it, yes. It's not the entire story, but they want you to think that that's the entire. It's about race and it's about guns. Let's use a few of our go-to topics so we can get more votes. That's what it's all about. It's about power. It's about using you and I to gain power, because they know that most of us aren't racist and we deplore that sort of thing. And most of us aren't going to go out and commit crimes with weapons. No, most of us who are sound Americans who uphold the law each and every day, which is there's a lot of us that actually uphold the law each and every day because we respect it, and we respect the country and love the country we come from. No matter if you're white, black, Asian, it doesn't matter. Mexican, Guatemalan, Dominican, Russian, Ukrainian. If you're living in America and you're an American citizen, you appreciate that. So much so that sometimes we do get riled up by politicians, and we go, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'm on your side." They're always out there, "Oh, I'll fight for you." No, you're not. You're fighting for the next vote so you can stay in power. All right. Your president and mine, Joseph R. Biden, made his way to Buffalo to talk about this tragic situation and use it for himself.
Hate will not prevail, and white supremacy will not have the last word. For the evil did come to Buffalo. It's come to all too many places. Manifest in gunmen who massacred innocent people in the name of hateful and perverse ideology, rooted in fear and racism. It's taken so much. 10 lives cut short in a grocery store. Three other wounded by a hate-filled individual who had driven 200 miles from Binghamton in that range to carry out a murderous, racist rampage that he would live stream to the world. What happened here is simple and straightforward. Terrorism. Domestic terrorism. Violence inflicted in the service of hate and the vicious thirst for power that defines one group of people being inherently inferior to any other group. A hate that through the media and politics, the internet, has radicalized, angry, alienated, lost, and isolated individuals into falsely believing that they will be replaced, that's the word, replaced by the other, by people who don't look like them.
Ladies and gentlemen, there was Joseph R. Biden today talking about white supremacy and the evil that it is. Folks, it is evil. Anybody who thinks, oh, I'm better than you because I'm a certain color of skin, doesn't trust and believe in the Word of God. That's first and foremost. Secondly, Joseph R. Biden also said this.
During the 60s, I was, in fact, very concerned about the civil rights movement. I was not an activist. I worked at an all-black swimming pool.
Well, there you go. This summer, if you're a white man like me, get a job at an all-black swimming pool, and you too will be as committed and determined to solve the racial tension in the country as Joe Biden. Wow. I don't know where the left goes on this stuff, or the Democrats, or the left-wingers, or the libs, or whatever you want to call them. It's strange. Last podcast, I mentioned something about David Ezerati, who's running for the 10th Ohio Congressional District, which incorporates Montgomery County, Greene County, and maybe a little Clark County. Anyway, 10th Congressional District, Mike Turner's running against, as a Republican, running against David Ezerati, who's the Democrat. David Ezerati is a bit of an activist here in Dayton. Some things I've agreed with him on. Today he put out a video that was absolutely bonkers. Because, you know, he's running for office, so why not ramp it up a little bit with a over-the-top explanation of the Second Amendment, and even going as far as denying certain parts of the Constitution. Obviously, he hates the Bill of Rights. He wants to deny people their right to a fair and speedy trial. He says it in this video, which I'm going to play for you now. It was just bonkers. Last podcast, I said, hey, if David Ezerati is against giving United States dollars to Ukraine because we got so much to fix here, then, hey, I might be voting for a Democrat. Folks, after this video, wow, it's insane. He wants to destroy the Bill of Rights and the Constitution all in one video, and it's whoever loaned him the AR he has in a video, you guys, you need to get that back, and you need to get it back quick. Anyway, here's a bit of that, and I might chime in a time or two, but here it is.
I'm David Ezerati. I'm running for Congress. I'm not happy today. I'm not happy today because some punk 18-year-old kid went into a grocery store and shot 10 people for being black. I'm not happy because this isn't the first time or the last time this will happen. I know what the Second Amendment says. I printed it out. I've got it right here.
All right. I'm going to stop it there and just say this. He said, the Second Amendment. I know what it says. I printed it out. I didn't know what it said until I had to print it out. Trust me, folks, that's what he did.
I've got it right here. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Shall not be infringed.
Let me tell you something. We forgot about the part It starts with a well-regulated militia. I was in a well-regulated militia. Got this little thing here says I jumped out of airplanes in that well-regulated militia. I'm going to tell you, even in that well-regulated militia, we weren't strapping guns everywhere we went.
Here's the part when he tells you that he's a soldier with his wings and all that good stuff, and the part where he tries to tell you that a well-regulated militia means only a government army. Okay, here we go.
We weren't strapping guns everywhere we went. We weren't concealing them. We weren't thinking we had the right to use them. Because the weapons we had were the weapons of war. Not self-defense, the weapons of war.
Because you were in the army, dumbass.
If George Washington had just like maybe 10 of these, 10, and enough ammunition, the Revolutionary War would have been over in about a week. This is the equivalent of a nuclear weapon when compared to the weapons that they had when they wrote the Second Amendment.
Here he goes, making a sad excuse for an explanation on why the Second Amendment only refers to muskets, while he's making a video sent out to the entire world on a streaming service called YouTube. I don't believe they had that. So let me utilize my First Amendment on a complete futuristic, out of this world technology compared to what was had back in the 1700s. Musket, internet. That seems about right, David Ezerati.
Black powder, a flintlock pistol. Do you think you could go into a grocery store and kill 10 people with one of those? You're on drugs. This is not your friend. This is not needed by any American because we live in a free state where we should be free of fear. I'm sorry. I know how to use one of these.
I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but when I'm rolling with my family and I'm strapped, I'm free from fear. Just saying.
One of these. I know the damage a 223 shell does and why it was designed that way. To go into a body and to ricochet around and basically shred the insides of whatever it hit. Emergency room doctors will tell you that the smaller round.
And for someone who seems to know so much about firearms, he would know that a 223 and a 5.56 aren't exactly the same. Look it up.
Weapon fires causes way more damage than a 9mm pistol. They will tell you any day of the week. Both of them are dangerous, but this one does a lot more damage. So, I don't know, what do we have to go back to figure out when this went wrong? Sandy Hook, where another punk kid got a hold of one of these and shot 27 children? People who believe the NRA and who believe that they have the right to own one of these and they think they're necessary for life in America need to wake up.
The NRA had nothing to do with creating the Second Amendment. That was the Founding Fathers. That's part of our Bill of Rights. It's upholded by our Constitution. I mean, does this dude not understand history? Wow, folks. It's so easy to pick this argument apart. It's the same old tired BS that the lefties push out every time something tragic happens in our world. Instead of helping the families instead of doing the right thing. They want to come after the law-abiding citizen. And they want to use this white versus black thing to get their way. Because it's been working.
This isn't the Wild West anymore. And it should never be the Wild West. Because in the Wild West, there is no government. There are no laws. There are no protections. It's he who shoots first wins. That's not a free society. When we have kids learning how to blockade their doors in schools, doing active shooter drills, there is something wrong. This doesn't happen in other countries. Now, I've stated my feelings. The way I see it, if you want to own one of these, first off, you better damn well be trained and evaluated in your use of it. That doesn't just mean, oh, I took a class and I went and shot a bit. It means you went to the United States military and were evaluated and trained long before you got to actually have one of these.
Apparently this guy, David Ezrati, loves government because the only way your Second Amendment matters is if you were trained by the government. The government has to give you the say-so. Wow.
It's a weapon of war. Then, once you have attained that and you come out and you want to have one of these still, you remain part of a well-regulated militia, which means you go out and drill with your militia once a month, keeping your skills sharp and checking on your buddies to make sure they're sharp and trusted. And these weapons, they stay in the same place they stayed when you were...
Okay, that I agree with. Folks, go out and shoot with your friends. Find a nice place to shoot where it's lawfully and legally possible, but find you a beautiful place to shoot with all your buddies and have a great time. It is so much fun to shoot, especially an AR-15. It is. It's fun to shoot those. Break out your pistols, your 22s for plinking. Yeah, set up some cool targets. Oh, it's just the best. It really is. Have fun shooting, folks.
They stayed when you were in the military. They stay in an armory. And you have to pull guard duty to guard those weapons on a regular basis. And if you are going to do all this, and it's not as part of the reserves or the National Guard, and you want to do it on your own, you're going to carry liability insurance on every single person in your militia. So that if one of these goes missing or one of them goes off the hook, you're held liable. Because dead Americans can't vote. Dead Americans can't pay taxes. Dead Americans can't replace anybody. They're just dead. We need to stop the insanity. A few years ago, it was August 2019. I was lying in my bed. Windows were open. It was kind of nice out. I heard a burst of gunfire. I heard some more shots. I knew right away something bad had happened. What happened were 9 people were shot by a depraved kid.
I'm going to go on the record and say BS. The dude says he lives in South Park. South Park is several miles away from the Oregon district. The shooting he's describing, if anybody else doesn't call BS on that, I don't know. But he's trying to use that because he's running. That was the most disgusting thing that I heard out of this entire video, out of this dude. That's why he needs to be exposed.
An incel who never should have had access to this. Just like the kid in Baltimore should never, or in, God, they all run together now. The last one was in Buffalo, excuse me. The one in Buffalo shouldn't have ever had access to. He went out and shot 9 people in Dayton. And a whole bunch of police officers were heroes and managed to kill him. A security guard died in Buffalo because he just had a pistol, and the kid had superior firepower and body armor. Now, do you want to explain why anybody needs to walk around with body armor or one of these if they're not out to do mayhem? Now, all this aside, it's time for a reckoning with this. And I am not going to be the congressman that solves this problem. Not by myself, and not even with a whole bunch of others, because we've got people in this country who have been told and force-fed that somehow they have a God-given right to own one of these.
Damn Skippy.
And you know, the funny thing is, he planned the attack. He shot those people. He had plans for another attack. And he pled not guilty. I got solutions for people like that. We don't try them. We take their own weapon and we shoot them right then and there and be done with it.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Is that not contrary to what the Constitution guarantees folks in this country? That's what they want to do. Democrats like this, they want to destroy the Constitution and your very way of life for their own power and their own feelings. Everybody's out there feeling about everything. And they're not paying attention to what the big picture is. You're going to lose it all for your feelings. We're going to play that again so you can hear the full gist of what he had to say. No trial by jury. We're just going to pick up your gun and shoot you in the head. That's murder, ladies and gentlemen. Ugh. Are we going to do that to everybody? Even the innocent folks? Oh, well, we got that one wrong. Good night.
Guilty. I got solutions for people like that. We don't try them. We take their own weapon and we shoot them right then and there and be done with it. We don't need to go through the whys or the whos or anything else. We know who did it. He made it very clear. There's no question of guilt. There was no question of intention. We shoot them. We get it over with. And we move on because it costs way too much for a death penalty case to go through. And it costs way too much to put them in jail forever. And it costs way too much to figure out all the rest of it. The next thing we find out is who sold him the gun. And we ask them, did they really think this person should have a gun like this and had a need for it? Because they contributed to this terrorist act. But again, I'm not going to solve this problem. It's only going to be solved one way. And that's when a majority of people in this country wake up and say, enough is enough. It's time to put the hammer down and just start dealing with this insanity, because these are not black powder rifles or flintlock pistols that the founding fathers talked about. You can't have a nuclear bomb just because the Second Amendment says you can have the right to bear arms. You can't have an M1 Abrams tank because it says you have the right to bear arms. You can have a single-shot shotgun, a single-shot rifle. You can have, I might even go as far to say, a revolver. After that, you don't need much more to protect yourself. And with a lot of the guns in armories where they belong, we can stop pretending that, good guys with guns are going to save us, because they don't. The good guy was the security guard, and he's dead.
I told him I was going to kill him all that with a gun if he didn't get out of my house.
11-year-old Chris Gaither was home alone Wednesday morning when he heard a noise. Someone had broken into his house. Scared, Chris grabbed a 9mm handgun.
When he was coming downstairs and told me he was going to kill me and F you, all that.
The intruder made it out the front door with a hamper in hand. That's when Chris started firing off bullets. As the intruder was to jump this fence, Chris's 12th and final shot hit the bad guy in the leg.
I shot through a hamper that he was carrying, and it was a full metal jacket bullet. I went straight through the bag and hit him in his leg. And he started crying like a little baby.
A baby that learned his lesson.
When I pulled the gun out on him, I guess he didn't think it was a real gun because he didn't worry about it. He just kept on walking.
The police have not released the name of the suspect, but Chris's mother says this man has robbed their house before. They don't know him personally. Chris credits his stepdad for his shooting skills.
Yeah, I play zombies for target practice.
Turns out there's more than a basset hound on guard.
I hope you learn a lesson from coming to this house trying to steal stuff.
I guess a firearm could save you. And he needed a couple more than just one, just a single shot. What if you miss? Well, 12 times the charm, I guess. Oh, Lord. Not to mention, the Second Amendment was not simply created to protect yourself and your effects, but also from tyrannical governments like what seems Dave Azarati wants to create by stripping the Constitution and your Bill of Rights. Wow, somebody's going to vote for this dude.
Again, electing me or electing Mike Turner, neither one of us is going to change a thing. It's up to you, not us. Until enough of you get angry and say, I don't want my kid doing active shooter drills in school. I don't feel comfortable when I see a guy strolling down the street strapped. I saw this at Courthouse Square on Saturday at the Roe Wade rally. There was a guy walking around, strapped, automatic pistol, semi-automatic pistol on his leg, walking around. We don't need to see people walking around with these like they did when the Klan came and marched in Dayton just before the tornadoes. We don't need to see these in the hands of everybody to feel safe. What we need to start doing is requiring truth in advertising for television and movies. That when you get shot with one of these, you don't get back up, and it's not pretty, and you end up in a wheelchair or worse, or, like a lot of the disabled vets that we sent off to war. There's a reason you joined the military, to defend your country. But how do we defend ourselves from our own citizens when they think it's okay to walk into a place and shoot your neighbors, your friends, your enemies, your community? I don't know. It's not okay. How
do you defend bad guys with guns? Oh, I don't know, Dave Azarati. With good guys with guns. Not just government.
Have to start showing guns with what in TV and movies. They do run out of bullets. Nobody hits every time when they shoot accurately. There's lots of people that get hit by errant bullets. You don't understand. These are dangerous weapons meant for war. They belong in the hands of soldiers. So, I've said how I feel about it. I'm probably going to be lambasted by a whole bunch of people saying, you could pull my gun out of my cold, dead fingers and all the rest of it. Hell, I used to have a T-shirt when I was in the Army. It said gun control is being able to hit your target. But no, I understand now. When we're having a mass shooting event almost every day, it's time to change things. This doesn't happen in other countries. And don't start talking to me about how much damage somebody could do with a crossbow or a knife or running their car through a crowd. Yes, those are all possible. But then again, if George Washington only had 10 of these, the British would have been smoked in a minute. I'm David Azarati. Find out more at electazarati.com. Please think about donating, subscribing, doing volunteering, helping me. Because in Mike Turner's worldview, nuclear weapons are a great thing, and there's no defense contract he'd not back, spending countless billions to defend us overseas, but not to defend your family and your children from some idiot with this gun in your child's school or supermarket or out at a concert, or we can keep going with where they've shot people. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow at 4.
What a miraculous, delightful orator of the word that Mr. Ezrati has. Wow, is he well, this gun, it's in my hands and it's bad. And all of these guns are bad. Not bad people. There are no bad people, only guns. And 8 people killed by a van in Waukesha does not equal, oh my Lord. Folks, that's not what we want in our government. Are we living through idiocracy or what? My goodness. Have you ever seen the movie Idiocracy by Mike Judge? You should watch it. I think we're there, folks.
One of Russia's closest neighbors, Finland, officially launched its bid to join NATO, with Sweden also announcing its intent to join. The country shares over 800 miles of border with Russia, and despite repeated threats from Russia, Finland is poised to join the U.S.-led Western Military Alliance. Imtiaz Tayyab has the latest.
We have today a historic day. Finland will maximize its security.
And with that, the Finnish president and prime minister announced the Nordic nation's intention to join NATO, ditching decades of neutrality towards Russia over fears of provoking its nuclear-armed neighbor.
The nuclear threat from Russia is, of course, a concern. Does joining NATO make Finland more vulnerable to that threat?
The nuclear threat, it's very serious. I think that within NATO, actually, it gives us security when it comes to nuclear, because NATO also have nuclear nuclear weapons.
So Finland is looking to join NATO along with Sweden. Finland's put their official bid in to join NATO. That was a big part of the reason the Russian-Ukraine war is happening now. Russia seems to be sending Iskander, which are nuclear-capable missiles, to the Finnish border between Russia and Finland. Haven't we said on this podcast before that this war is escalating? Well, it is. This war is totally escalating further and further. Not only is our treasure going to Ukraine to be dispersed who knows where, while we suffer at home with, increasing cost at the grocery store and at the gas station, some items not even being able to be found, like baby formula and things like that. That's no big deal. We have to continue to fund regime change wars. We have to continue to fund wars all over the world, because we're the United States world police, and it's our job to protect everyone.
America's current nuclear strategy is a deterrent strategy based on the idea that nobody can win a nuclear war without mutual annihilation. And this has been the strategy since the 1960s, based entirely on an all-out nuclear attack from Russia. But this is a problem for the U.S., because Russia is playing by their own set of rules. A key element to America's nuclear deterrent system is our Ohio-class nuclear submarines, which were all built in the 1980s and armed with Trident missiles that cannot reach any Russian targets from port, which is where most of them remain, despite Russia's threats of nuclear war. The Russians, on the other hand, have intercontinental ballistic missiles loaded onto their submarines, which are capable of reaching the United States even when docked at port. But they are not at port. Russia has made their nuclear submarines actively ready for war with NATO. We reportedly have only 4 on patrol at all times, because the main element of America's nuclear deterrent is our aging land-based nuclear umbrella, designed specifically for mutual assured destruction, a doomsday machine. This outdated system has gone untested for over 30 years, while Russia has continued their testing, as well as continued to build thousands of advanced tactical nukes, while the U.S. has decreased its own stockpile to below 200. Biden has assured Putin that a nuclear war can never be won, even though the United States itself has already proven otherwise. So is it really that mad to assume a possible victory? We know that the Earth can withstand it. There has already been over 2,000 nuclear bombs detonated on Earth, mostly underwater, underground, and in the upper atmosphere. But it's clear that the Earth's atmosphere can take it. American media is even suggesting it would be good for the environment. But the West could potentially be defeated with only one nuke. Russia has released videos of a strategy wherein they could detonate an underwater nuke to create a tsunami that would devastate the United Kingdom. But there is a strategy far more simple that they could deploy. A surprise attack with a super EMP weapon could bring the United States and Europe to their knees in an instant. A large enough nuke detonated in our upper atmosphere could fry the entire electrical grid, which is already in need of repair. This type of super EMP is capable of an electromagnetic pulse that can emit up to 150,000 volts per square meter, which is 3 times the amount our military systems are shielded for. An EMP attack like this could quite easily cripple our military communications, keeping the U.S. from waging any sort of counterstrike. The payload required for a super EMP could be launched from a submarine at hypersonic speeds, and could also be hidden on board a satellite. An EMP payload could have already been discreetly delivered into our atmosphere by Russia, China, or the United States, and once detonated, would first take out all other satellites, leaving all evidence of the true perpetrator undetectable, so it could be blamed on anyone. And with the CCP-owned Biden administration openly vying for the Great Reset, it would seem that taking down the entire public grid could actually serve their Build Back Better agenda. Why on earth would the world care if America was silenced and put to sleep? Average Americans seem to enjoy the endless illegal wars. The mercenaries are now clamoring for a few more bloody dollars. The liberals are celebrating a world war with Russia. And the Republicans are cheering for Elon Musk, who has used his alliance with NASA, which was founded by Nazis, to serve the neo-Nazi battalions in Ukraine against Russia. This is Greg Reese.
Yowza. I guess anything's possible, isn't it? An EMP would be destructive. It may be the only defense Russia has because of NATO. NATO's a very strong military presence in the world, in Europe. Things are heating up, folks. So the question still remains, will Finland and Sweden join NATO? Well, there's a report saying that Turkey will block Finland and Sweden. Here's a report from WION News.
Our top focus at this hour. Now, hours after Sweden and Finland confirmed intentions to join NATO, their membership plans have hit a roadblock. The opposition is Turkey, whose president has said that he would not approve either bids. Sweden and Finland need all of NATO's 13 members to approve their applications. And the ratification process is expected to take up to a year. Turkey's objection, however, have thrown a wrench in their plans. Turkey's main objection is the willingness of the 2 Scandinavian countries to host members of Kurdish groups that Ankara deems as terrorists. Turkey's opposition, initially brushed off by the United States and other NATO members, now look to present a serious obstacle. On Monday, representatives of Sweden and Finland said that they plan to travel to Turkey to address Ankara's objections. But President Erdogan told them not to bother coming. Listening. Now, this escalation comes after Turkey on Sunday laid out 3 demands for the Scandinavian nations. It wanted Sweden and Finland to stop supporting Kurdish terrorist groups in their territory, provide clear security guarantees, and lift export bans on Turkey. Now, Sweden had suspended arms sales to Turkey 3 years ago, following Ankara's military intervention in Syria. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin offered a mild response to the decision of Finland and Sweden, saying as far as expansion goes, Russia has no problems with these states. But he stressed that any expansion of military infrastructure would trigger a response from the Kremlin. Listen in. Now, Sweden and Finland's decision to choose NATO over their decades-old policy of neutrality is a setback for Moscow. Its invasion of Ukraine has done the very thing Russia has repeatedly stated it does not want, which is the enlargement of NATO.
All right, and here's the latest out of Mariupol in Ukraine. This is from Detroit's Channel 4 News.
The Russian war on Ukraine, one of the longest and bloodiest battles of this war, has ended. Hundreds of Ukrainian troops at that steel plant in Mariupol that we've talked about for weeks surrendered. It's a major victory for Russia, which now controls that city. Let's get to Richard Engel with more.
In the end, hunger and injuries won out over bravery. More than 200 Ukrainian fighters bunkered down for weeks beneath the Mariupol steel factory surrendered to Russian troops. They'd fought even though they were outnumbered and surrounded as Russian troops bombed the city relentlessly, destroying a theater where hundreds of children were sheltering and a maternity hospital. The steel factory was their last holdout, their Alamo. But it couldn't last forever. The fighters, including many seriously wounded, were bused to a Russian-controlled enclave in Ukraine. Ukraine's President Zelensky said combat operations in Mariupol are over for now. Ukraine needs Ukrainian heroes alive. That's our principle, he said. The Ukrainian government said they'll be part of a prisoner swap. But Russia said it's considering labeling the Ukrainian soldiers members of a terrorist group and will investigate each fighter for possible crimes against civilians. It appears to be Russia's way of pressuring Ukraine not to put more Russian soldiers on trial for war crimes.
The loss of Mariupol is a significant blow to Ukraine and a victory for Russia, which now controls its first major Ukrainian city since Russia invaded this country nearly 3 months ago.
Okay, I believe it's safe to say that the eastern portion of Ukraine is in Russian hands. It's possibly safe to say that that was exactly what Russia was intending all along. Without getting into like military tactics and different things, it's possible that moving forces from Belarus into and toward Kiev was in hopes to pull Ukrainian soldiers toward the capital city in order to take the east. Well, the east is just about secured for Russia. What will they do next? That is the question, and we'll monitor that. But I know what we're doing. We, the United States, we are giving billions and billions of dollars in equipment and weaponry to Ukraine to continue to fight this war as a proxy.
President.
Senator from Kentucky.
Reserving the right to object, my oath of office is to the U.S. Constitution, not to any foreign nation. And no matter how sympathetic the cause, my oath of office is to the national security of the United States of America. We cannot save Ukraine by dooming the U.S. economy. In March, inflation hit a 40-year high. Gasoline alone is up 48%, and energy prices are up 32% over the last year. Food prices have increased by nearly 9%. Used vehicle prices are up 35% for the year, and new vehicle prices have increased 12% or more. Yes, inflation doesn't just come out of nowhere. It comes from deficit spending. The United States spent nearly $5 trillion on COVID-19 bailouts, leading to one of the highest and most sustained levels of inflation in U.S. history. Americans are feeling the pain, and Congress seems intent only on adding to that pain by shoveling more money out the door as fast as they can. This bill under consideration would spend $40 billion. This is the second spending bill for Ukraine in 2 months, and this bill is 3 times larger than the first. Our military aid to Ukraine is nothing new, though. Since 2014, the United States has provided more than $6 billion in security assistance to Ukraine, in addition to the $14 billion Congress authorized just a month ago. If this bill passes, the U.S. will have authorized roughly $60 billion in total spending for Ukraine. For those who say this is not enough, for those of you in this chamber who say that our military spending is never enough, let's put $60 billion into perspective. According to Elias Youssef, a security assistant at the Stimson Center, Kiev would become the largest yearly recipient of U.S. military aid of the past 2 decades. Except for the top 5 countries, $60 billion is more than every other country in the world spends on their entire military expenditures. If this gift to Ukraine passes, our total aid to Ukraine will almost equal the entire military budget of Russia. And it's not as if we have that money lying around. We will have to borrow that money from China to send it to Ukraine. The cost of this package we are voting on today is more than the U.S. spent during the first year of the U.S. conflict in Afghanistan. Congress authorized force, and the president sent troops into the conflict. The same cannot be said of Ukraine. This proposal towers over domestic priorities as well. The massive package of $60 billion to Ukraine dwarfs the $6 million spent on cancer research annually. $60 billion is more than the amount the government collects in gas taxes each year to build roads and bridges. The $60 billion to Ukraine could fund substantial portions or entire large cabinet departments. The $60 billion nearly equals the entire State Department budget. The $60 billion exceeds the budget for the Department of Homeland Security and for the Department of Energy. And Congress just wants to keep on spending and spending. Our allies and partners have sent aid to Ukraine. Some of them even broke long-standing traditions by sending military assistance. Germany, Poland, the United Kingdom, and others are stepping up to defend Ukraine like never before. In other words, it's not all about us. It isn't that we always have to be the Uncle Sam, the policeman that saves the world, particularly when it's on borrowed money. Yet the United States accounted for nearly half of what's been spent so far. With a $30 trillion debt, America can't afford to be the world's policeman. The U.S. is trying to recover from the $1.6 trillion we spent on wars in the Middle East, not to mention the $5 trillion borrowed for COVID. We should not forget that the Soviet Union collapsed in large part, not because it was defeated militarily, but because it ran out of money. In an attempt to save Ukraine, will we doom the United States to such a future? In the past 2 years, the U.S. has borrowed more money than at any time in our history. We are already experiencing the greatest rate of inflation in over 4 decades. The assault on monetary discipline is untenable, and it cannot go on forever. Unless we put an end to the fiscal insanity, a day of reckoning awaits us. Congress should evaluate the cost of continuing down this path. The biggest threat to the United States today is debt and inflation and the destruction of the dollar. We cannot save Ukraine by killing our economic strength. So I act to modify the bill to allow for a special inspector general. This would be the inspector general that's been overseeing the waste in Afghanistan and has done a great job. So therefore, I ask the senator to modify his request so that the Senate proceeds to the immediate consideration of Calendar 368 H.R. 7691. Furthermore, that the Paul amendment that has to be considered and agreed to, the bill as amended be considered read a third time, and the Senate vote on passage of the bill as amended with a 60 affirmative vote threshold for passage.
Does the leader so modify his request?
Reserving the right to object. It's clear from the junior senator from Kentucky's remarks he doesn't want to aid Ukraine. That is not the case for the overwhelming majority here. Again, all he will accomplish with his actions here today is to delay that aid, not to stop it. It's the aid desperately needed by a valiant people fighting against authoritarianism and defending democracy. So I will not modify.
So that was Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky speaking, objecting to delivering another $40 billion to Ukraine. He wanted to know where the money is going. I think that's a reasonable request, but it doesn't matter. Because as at the end, Chuck Schumer said, All he's going to do is delay it. It's going there because the majority of your congressmen want it to go there, including our congressman in the 10th district, Mike Turner. It's incomprehensible that we're delivering this type of money to a country that is ranked 4th most corrupt in the world. It's crazy. But the United States is going to do it because we want to fight this proxy war against Russia. We want to ramp up and escalate this war until we're involved, because the United States has never met a war currently that we don't want to be a part of. It's upsetting, it's disheartening, and it's crushing the future for our children, because we no longer take care of what is happening here in America. We want to use things like divisional tactics, race, gender. We want to use the gun issue. We want to use all these other things, these hot button issues, to divide the people, so therefore they can start sending their money out here and getting their inside deals and stock buys, and it's just they go in and get rich off of our back. The taxpayer, the voter, the folks that need to stand up is you and I, and put it in to all of this. But we won't. Nope. We'll just keep on keeping on, won't we? Or will we? We got to do it peacefully, lovingly, but we have to stand up and utilize our voice, utilize our First Amendment that so many want to take away. Oh, Lord. We're in trouble, folks. We're in trouble. Our country, our republic is in trouble. And you have to understand that. I'm Matt Truman. This is Truman's Town Hall. Talk to y'all here in a little bit. And just so you know, it looks like a pretty close tie, even going into the 18th in Pennsylvania for Senator McCormick and Oz. Oz inched ahead. It's like 31.3% to 31.1% for McCormick. So who knows when that'll get settled. But anyway, I hope you all have a good week. I'll try to get on the Facebook Live this Friday. I missed last Friday, I know, but we'll try to get on it there this week and update you on any stories that pop up. Talk to you later.